Welcome to the Dover-Sherborn Regional School Committee meeting of June 6, 2017. Tonight's meeting is an annual meeting when the regional committee elects its slate of officers for the upcoming year. And it's customary at this meeting that the superintendent preside over the meeting until the chair is elected. Then the meeting will be turned back over to the new chair to conduct the rest of the meeting. So, given that, we'll get right to the process. What I will do first is I will call for nominations for the position of chair. And once all nominations have been called, I'll then ask for a second for each nomination if there are multiple nominations. Once a nomination has been made and seconded, I will then call for a vote. Are we ready to begin? Are there any nominations for the chairperson position?
So I would like to nominate Claire Graham for chair.
So in the non-reorganization, reorganization.
The non-reorganization, reorganization.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I would ask, is there a second for the nomination of Claire Graham as chair?
I'll second.
Okay, the nomination for Claire Graham as chair has been made by Ms. Crucell, seconded by Ms. White. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the record shows that's a unanimous vote. So 2 lessons that we just learned. Well, first, congratulations to Claire for being elected chair. But the lesson learned, of course, is if you're not at a meeting. Okay, seeing as Claire is not here tonight, I will then call for nominations for the position of vice chair. Do I have any nominations for vice chair?
Would you like to nominate?
I'd like to nominate Lori Crucell.
Any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none, I'll ask for a second. Is there a second for the nomination of Ms. Crucell as vice chair?
I second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hovey. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let the record show that's a unanimous vote. Congratulations, Laurie.
Thank you.
I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. First order of business, I would like to wholeheartedly welcome the new members to the committee, Maggie Sharon and Ann Hovey. We're very excited to have you on board. So thank you. Next, I'd like to open up for community excuse me. Nominations for secretary. Do we have any?
I nominate Dana White.
I second that.
You want to think about it?
Nope. Okay, all in favor?
I guess I'll vote for myself.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
So now I'd like to open it up to community comments, if there are any. Okay, seeing none, then we are going to move along to staff reports.
At some point in our agenda, there was a motion that I wanted to propose regarding some of our summertime activities.
It now seems like a perfectly fine time to do that if you want to. That's okay.
In conversations kind of that have been floating around, I think there's been an interest expressed that the regional school committee have a workshop or workshops to kind of explore topics that as we move into a new set of leadership and other things that have come up over the last 12 months. So I think it would be helpful if we have a formal motion that we could discuss around what those would be. Just wanted to look at that, and if you're ready, I can give the motion.
Sure.
So I think the regional school committee should schedule at least 2 planning workshops between June 15th and August 31st to help us prepare for the 2017-2018 school year. The first workshop would be limited to regional school committee members, while the second would include Dr. Kehoe and any others as he so chooses. Topics would include, but not be limited to, including implications of the new DSEA contract and other elements about how we operate as a committee, particularly in light of a new management team coming on.
Okay, is there any discussion?
I'll second that, so we can discuss it. I think it's a great idea. I think that summer is a perfect time to get together, both as a group of 6, especially with 2 new members, to talk among ourselves at first. We can talk about whether that's a facilitated discussion or just the 6 of us, that we can certainly discuss that. And then once we're a little bit more on the same page on things, I think then bringing in and having a conversation with Dr. Kehoe would be very advantageous. So I would be fully in support of having 2 workshops over the summer.
I agree. I think improved communication over the summer, perfect timing, and I think it's a good idea to get the budgetary ball rolling.
And I'd say for one of the new people, I think it would be really helpful for me, and I assume for you also, to be able to engage in some of those conversations in a really open forum where there's time to really dig deep if we need to. So I think it's good.
Okay, are we ready for a vote?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all in favor?
Um,
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Kellett.
Amy, I emailed you what that text was.
I didn't have to scribble furiously. Thank you.
You can see I was reading off of things.
Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to our 2 new school committee members. Thank you for being willing to throw your hats in the ring and support us, guide us. In the middle school report, you will see that we are just slightly busy this time of year. Yesterday, we hosted our middle school arts festival, fine arts festival. It was fantastic, well attended, and the students did an outstanding job. And it was well organized by Ms. Simino and the rest of her crew, music folks. Tomorrow, we are off, the 8th grade is off to DC early in the morning for 3 days, and at the same time, Mr. Maringer and Mr. Jardin will be hosting the Chickering is coming tomorrow, and our 6th grade is doing their field day and barbecue. On Thursday, we have Pine Hill will be coming to visit, the 5th graders will be coming to visit, and then Friday, we're hosting a Rigs and Wings training workshop, which we hope will carry into the fall. And ultimately, the students who are trained will facilitate workshops during MLK Day in January. We want to congratulate both Sophia Katz and Jack Worth, who were chosen as our scholar leaders and attended the banquet May 17th. It was a very nice event, and I had the pleasure of joining them along with Mr. McIntosh and Mr. Wiskowski. And also Eric Yang, one of our 7th graders, he participated for the Massachusetts Math Counts team in the national competition, and he helped the team to an 8th place finish nationally, and he came in 49th in the country, top 25% as a 7th grader.
That's great.
I don't know if you've ever seen one of these competitions. They don't even finish reading the question, and these guys have the answer. It's so impressive. Look it up on YouTube. It's phenomenal. It's so impressive. So that's huge congratulations to him.
We've had, the past 2 years, we've had someone representing DS on the state team. So congratulations to Eric. And finally, in the packet, I hope you have a chance to read the CAG update. There's a bunch of information there, but the CAG update from their service day a few weeks ago was really exciting.
Yeah, that was terrific. Thank you.
Was it raining for the people who were outside?
It was hot.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh,
It was the hot day.
the one hot day.
Yeah.
Great day.
Thank you.
What is EDS an acronym for?
Oh, the EDSK. to the Thomas Upham House. in Medford.
Elderly and disabled.
Yeah, elderly.
Oh,
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell, and members of the Regional School Committee. I wanted to take this moment to publicly thank Dover-Sherborn Education Fund for their generosity, their resources, and their time, and their commitment to the entire district, but I'm speaking on behalf of the high school. We received several grants, and once again, these are grants which we are really excited about. They're going to provide great opportunities for us in our classrooms, in our labs, in all different areas. One of the ones that I highlighted in my report is the upgrade to our library. We're going to be looking to modernize the library with some high tops and some spots for bring your own device, student drops. We've also received monies that we will use to purchase to create a mobile sort of speaker series, so that when we have guest presentations or guest speakers come in, Paul will be able to reconfigure the library so that it's more adaptable for speakers coming in. We also have some additional furniture which is going to be coming in, which is going to create these small little pods where students can find their niche within the library for collaboration in groups, small study areas, high tops where they can be doing some work as well. So we're really excited about that. A number of other grants related to cultural responsiveness, one of our goals at the high school. The Grout in Technology Engineering has received a very substantial grant. And finally, I wanted to talk about the Metro West grant. As you saw in your packet, we're thrilled that we did receive the Metro West grant for $158,000, which will cover some of our expenses over the next 3 years. This will enable us to have a transition program, which we greatly need. It will benefit all of our students. It is, once again, a general education program for any student who perhaps has had some mental health issue, hospitalization, concussions, a whole variety of things that have prevented them from accessing the curriculum, attending school on a full-time basis, and being a regular part of the high school community. So those two pieces. And then I just wanted to give a shout out to all of our spring teams. We had an outstanding spring of a lot of very successful teams. We still have some teams who are continuing on into the tournament. We had a lot of great individual performances, so it certainly was a very proud spring in many of our sports for our male and female athletes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Smith.
I just wanted to report on the CPAC meeting. We held a special education parents advisory committee meeting, at which time John Smith, Scott Kellett, well, Brian Merringer instead of Scott Kellett attended, myself and Ellen Shagnon attended to talk about the upcoming changes and answer questions for parents about special education up the region for next school year. The CPAC is also planning a similar meeting to this nature for the fall at the elementary level. Our elementary leaders weren't able to attend this meeting, and there was some interest to have a meeting at the elementary level. So at the CPAC meeting, I talked about the language-based program. We're adding a teacher to that program for the high school. That search is underway and going well. Parents were excited to hear about that expansion happening and meeting the needs of the students through the continuum of services. We also talked about the expansion of the life skills program. Actually, we were able to sign our candidate today, and we are very excited to have that person in place for the fall. CPAC also asked some questions and heard about the BCBA district-wide positions, so the board certified behavior analysis. Currently, we've had 2 people in position at the 2 elementary schools, and we haven't had any service that really is functioning as a systems of schools, so those positions have been realigned to create a better service delivery for our students and our families, and the search is underway for that position also. And then the last piece that we talked about, Ellen Shagnon was there at the meeting and talking about the transition program. And as you just heard from John, we're very excited to be moving forward in that direction.
Thank you. Thanks. Nice to have that end of year wrap up. That's,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, how was the general vibe?
appreciated.
I thought it was great. I think all of the CPAC meetings have been really wonderful this year. please, if you hear anything different or hear that it went well, but that's what I heard.
Yeah, and if I may, it's also good feedback for us too, some things that, you know, we need to look at, or we need to improve, or, you know, if there was something that we're made aware of. So I thought it was very positive, and then things that were brought up by parents of concern were legitimate concerns, and they're things that we will continue to investigate.
No, I think it's a nice thing to do, a nice tradition, hopefully. That was great. Thank you.
I think it's nice to remind parents that we're really accessible, because I think that at times, maybe our parents feel like, you know, there's the IEP meeting and that's where this conversation can only happen, and sometimes for our parents, that meeting is in the late spring, and so we want to remind parents that we're reachable, because that's your building administrator, the special ed director, and, you know, we want to hear from our parents and address concerns.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Leduc.
Thank you. The educator evaluation system is rounding out this full year using our new software, TeachPoint. You can see how those plans have reflected on their goals, but also the qualified peer observers, which is for year one of a 2-year plan. So that's where colleagues get to work with other colleagues on specific goals. And you can see it's a good exchange of ideas. There's increasing collegiality and thoughtful questions. But everyone's always looking for more time, and how do I fit this into my schedule? So the long-range plan is to maybe take this under advisement with the whole group of educators as Dr. Keogh transitions. I wanted to provide an update of the work of Ms. Marshall Giller at Dover-Sherborn, medical coordinator, in the area of diversity and inclusion. I had mentioned it briefly at the joint school committee meeting, but some of the great initiatives, John just mentioned some, as did Scott, looking at how do we make sure we fully include all students and families, educators, administrators, and community members, and thinking about our global society. And Monique has done a great job with Conversation Cafe, the MECO Youth Conference, the Anti-Defamation League, Conversation Club, Family and Friends events. There's just been so many great things happening, so I just wanted to do a shout out to her. And then specifically the Roots and Wings program. We've been looking since I came here for something that would be a program that could encompass all of those constituents. And Monique found Roots and Wings, and that has turned out to be something that's been beneficial to all 4 of our schools, but specifically here in the region.
Terrific. Thank you.
Since this is your last meeting, and there was a fairly significant initiative you were involved in at least a couple of years ago, I wanted to understand where we are with the admissions to DS through an international program, and where does that stand, and how it's being handed off to the next generation.
We have handed it off already through the CBIS, which is the international licensing for visas, to Mr. Smith and Andy Keegan, that we did. But we have had very little communication with Educations, who was the vendor that we chose. We had very little interest. We had a couple of students, John, I think, who came forward with their proficiency in English. Once we started to probe, they wouldn't be able to function well at DS. So we haven't had any inquiries since then. It's something I think with the new administration, maybe we could look at. But, and I know Mr. Smith and I hosted a year ago a busload of people from all different countries.
We did, yeah.
And it doesn't seem as though people are interested in us right now. I don't know if that's got to do with sort of global situations. I don't have a sense, but yours reflects.
Yeah, some of it, I think, we are looking for some schools that will also offer them a diploma.
That's exactly right, yes.
And, you know, we have said that that's not a place where we're at. So I think that for some families that has been the case. We also had said we wanted to start with a semester-based. So I think, you know, and that's something I think as a regional school committee and administration we can certainly discuss, and that's the wish of the regional school committee to say, no, we're willing to look at full year people. I'm fine with that, but we felt like starting slow would be really good. We do continue to have AFS students, which is great, and those students have worked out fantastically, and they can, you know, continue to really kind of meld well with our school community. So
So it's still on your radar, which.
Oh,
but that's-
absolutely,
Again,
yeah.
that's what I.
It is.
Because
Karen
I
has
hadn't really gotten the
transferred it
sense
over.
that it.
Yeah, every week I
Okay.
receive updates and different
Okay.
things from them, and then they know that, because we are on their active
Yes,
list.
okay.
It might be interesting to relax the constraint of the semester, or to discuss the relaxing of the constraint of the semester, to see, I mean, right now we have two variables, and we don't know whether it's a global thing, or a diploma thing, or a semester thing. So
Correct.
maybe if we adjust one of them, we can get some better info on whether it's one or the other two.
We'd also said only freshmen and sophomores, and I have
That's
to wonder
young.
if
Yeah.
that's a little too young,
Yeah.
although my experience in my former district, it was fine, but I mean, it's just, how do we grow it? And so maybe thinking next year, long term.
So it sounds like that should go on a agenda item for something.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a
fall.
burning
Yeah, I just
thing, but I
don't,
think,
yeah. we put
when's the
time into
deadline,
it,
I
not
guess,
to
is the
lose.
question. When does their,
It's right now
Yeah.
for next year. So you have the
Yes, ma'am.
following year, if you could make decisions by January, February about maybe relaxing some of those expectations, we may be able to find others.
And where we had interest, but you guys felt that, again, the language was not secure enough, what countries were those?
Both for China.
Yeah.
If I may, Lori, next, the next school committee that will take place in the fall, I plan on bringing forward a proposal for a field trip, overnight international trip. And the reason I mention it, it's going to be a trip to Spain proposal, in which students at DS will actually live with families for 4 to 5 days and really immerse themselves, in addition to having, the traditional cultural opportunities to visit different sites. They'll also live with families. And I'm wondering if this won't also maybe bridge to something different, perhaps, that, we can explore something reciprocal. Maybe.
Good thought.
what time of year, what,
It would take place next spring.
right? I mean, is there any benefit to talking about the semester constraint now, or do you want to just leave it till next year?
I think as long as you can give educationists enough lead time for when they're doing their recruiting.
For the next
So
year?
if you make that decision in the fall, if you wanted to give yourselves time to, for us to present.
And I think we should, might as well have the new,
That's true.
our new leadership team also weigh in on their reactions to this as well. But I just wanted to make sure that there was.
Yeah, and that's why I
was
decided to
enough-
wait for Dr.
Yeah.
Keough, because I want to make sure that he's on board with such a trip.
Yeah.
It may have a different
Yeah.
feeling from Mr. McAuliffe, and,
Yep.
but yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
open to that, and we will hopefully continue having AFS students.
And Karen, our many, many thanks, by the way, for your last meeting. We wish you very much happiness and good luck, and enjoy your next adventure. You've been so great here, and we appreciate you.
Thank you very much. It's my honor to have spent the end of my career. I thank you for the opportunity and for the growth that I have experienced, yes.
And the last grandchild was,
Born on Saturday.
Oh,
Little boy.
Oh,
Yeah.
very exciting.
I'm not a little excited about that.
How many times have you shown me the picture?
Terrific. Okay, Mr. McAuliffe.
Thank you, Laurie. In the superintendent's report, there are 2 documents. There are updates. First, on personnel changes going into next year. There's a revised version that was handed out to you that's a little different than the version that was in your packet. I want to point out that right now, they're region-wide, between the middle school and high school, we have 8 positions, professional staff positions, turning over. Actually 7, not including the assistant superintendent. 4 of them we knew about as retirements, and 3 have been resignations over the last couple of months. I think that there still may be some turnover. Things do happen over the summer, but my sense is that from a professional staff standpoint, I'd be surprised if there's, any major surprises. The good news is that although there looks like there's a number of blanks next to, in the new hire column, we are, John and Scott have really done a great job Here, I would tell you that the middle school and high school speech and language specialist, the middle school Spanish teacher, the middle school ELA teacher, and the language-based LD teacher, recommendations have been submitted to my office. We're scheduling the final visits, and I'm sure they'll be signed up within the next week. So that just leaves a couple of positions that I know we're working hard on. The transition program coordinator position, which is really the counselor position, given that we were just notified of being awarded the grant, that'll be posted, and the staff will get to work on that. So we're in a really good place, especially for this time of year with the hiring process. And in addition, just have, yeah,
Actually, quickly,
sure.
I apologize, but the music teacher, so Bob Martell, is Janice Berry continuing then as the arts program coordinator that fits in with?
Yes, she is indeed. So her teaching load will still be the .8. So the leftover .2 from Bob's full-time position is actually been assigned to Jeff Herman.
Oh, great.
So Jeff's FTE will increase from .6 to .8.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we're really pleased about how that all played out.
Yeah.
So what does Janice in the coming year, what will all the hats she have then be?
She'll have the high school jazz band, the high school concert band, and then she'll have general music, and then one section of guitar.
At the middle school.
For teaching, and
It
next
used to
year,
be Chickering, right?
Right, so it's.
yes,
Okay, so then Chickering will have a new.
Chickering now has a
That's
vacancy.
That's the part I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so
I was trying to
Chickering will be
picture her
hiring
running
a
back and
.8.
forth
Oh,
to-
gosh, no.
Yeah, no, she won't have to do that.
Switching gears from third
Exactly.
graders to seniors.
Yes, exactly.
She'll have band here at the middle school. She'll pick up the band program staff at the school. Tom will be here. He will continue as general music teacher, and we anticipate he will be doing similar to what Kathy Semino has done with Challenge Success. He'll keep the music room open during H block for students to go and just have
But,
a time.
so Janice has 2 bands and a jazz band now, and some general teaching duties.
Yes, yes.
And then in your packet is just an adjusted projections for the region. I adjusted the projections, I think, back in March. I updated the grade 6 numbers, projected numbers, based on the actual grade 5 that hadn't been done. And then a question came up just the other day, and I went back to look at it, and I noted that I made another adjustment, and that is, I noticed that there was an update error in the one-year cohort survival rate that's found at the bottom, where it begins with 104%, then goes across 102. That cell needed to be updated from the previous year. It was still counting 2015 and not, but wasn't counting 2016 rate. So anyway, it did change the numbers just a little bit. So if we go on most recent trends, we're expecting, again, about the same number to enroll in September. Maybe, the projection shows 4 more than the number of students that were enrolled last year. So I expect that those numbers, frankly, are pretty solid.
Great.
They certainly didn't fall off like we thought they were going to a few years ago.
They did not.
Madam Chairperson,
Yes,
may I ask a question?
sure. Could you identify yourself, please?
Sure, I'm Stephen Leahy from 12 Wilton Street in Sherborn.
Thanks.
A quick question on that breakdown. Do you happen to have, on that sheet that I'm looking at, do you happen to have a breakdown between the 2 towns of those numbers? No?
I don't.
Okay.
We can get them. I don't have them. And I do know, Stephen, I was following some of the conversations that were occurring in Sherborn about possible changes in the apportionment rate in the future. I think that's something that, and I'll send you the numbers. If you send me an email to remind me, I'll send you some numbers. The interesting note that I was thinking of around that discussion is that while Pine Hill's enrollment has been growing, there's been the same amount of growth at Chickering. So as those elementary growth numbers move into the region, I'm not sure that the apportionment percentage will change as drastically or as much as what the thinking might have been around those conversations. So my sense is, and again, it's really more intuitive than anything else, just looking at the way the numbers have increased over the last 3 years, is that they've been fairly consistent in terms of the ratio. So,
And on the exit side, this is the last large class of Sherborn resident students. I think there was as many, if not more, Sherborn students in this class as there were Dover children.
For seniors at the moment?
In the seniors, I think it's so, all the other ratios would be kind of going
Yeah.
back to being more normal. So I don't think there's going to be much shifting of costs like there has been the last several years.
yeah, I think so. I think that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And did we want to, at this time, I'd like to welcome Donna Moore and Jen Lawrence from the Wellness Committee to tell us a little bit about the Nutrition Outreach Coordinator.
So Laura, if I could just
Oh, yeah.
introduce this?
Sure.
Thank you. You received information in your packet for a proposal. I just want to bring to your attention, the agenda says Nutrition Outreach Counselor. It's actually Nutrition Outreach Coordinator, and that's identified in the packet of materials that you did receive. And so we do have members of the Wellness Committee here that are going to make a brief presentation. And before we get to that, though, I'd just like to ask Dr. Leduc to introduce that.
I just want to frame it for those of you that have not been part of us for the past 4 years. Advocate came in and did a report of the food service across all of our 4 buildings. And one of those recommendations was in the area of marketing, promoting healthy resources and choices for our students. The food service subgroup of the Wellness Committee, which is comprised of Janelle Madden, the food service director who's here, Lori Purcell was a part of that, Donna Moore, Kelly Alducci, Lori Purcell, and Tammy, I can't remember your last name.
Corral.
Thank you. I knew it would come to me if you said it, right? I'm sorry, please excuse me. We're also part of that food service subgroup. So you have a PowerPoint there that those slides will be spoken to this evening. We didn't project them. But I'm going to ask Janelle to frame sort of the session.
Going to your PowerPoint, actually, the first slide is about innovations that are already happening in the food service program. And the first one of those is the Farm to School program, or Harvest of the Month. And we promote that every year. We've been doing it for at least the past 6 years. There's a great program in the state that comes up with, signage and promotion for that. And that's where the kids learn about the different fruits and vegetables. But not only has it been fruit and vegetables, we've gone to Seed to School. We have a local company that's catching local fish and preparing it, and we're serving it. Also, one of the things that the students really like, one of the initiatives we started was a build your own meal, whether it be a sandwich or a sub or an Asian meal or a Mexican meal. We do a lot of, the kids seem to like the hotter foods at this level of their age, and they seem to really enjoy heat, so we give them a lot of Mexican options and with a lot of condiments to go along with it. We've also made some changes in our salads. We've come up with, our local produce company has come up with some cuts of its own, and one of the things is a veggie power blend, and that seems to be big with the students as well. We also have grab-and-go meals. One of the biggest hits is a hummus Lunchable. We really like that, but we also they can come up and grab a complete meal of a sandwich or a salad with everything that goes with it. And, if it's a nice day, particularly the high school kids, they can go outside and eat, because it is something portable. That has worked really well. We also offer a lot of healthy smart snacks, is what the new term is, for the USDA a la carte options. And we offer things like granola, kind bars, low-fat cheese, beef and chicken jerky items. So they can build fruit and yogurt parfaits, so they can build their own meal if they want. If you don't see anything that appeals to them, then they'll do that. We're proposing, we've met as a subcommittee, Karen, Laurie, I think you were in the original, and Jen Lawrence and Donna Moore, along with Tammy and, sorry. No.
Kelly's not here.
Kelly's not here, all right. And with the idea of building on what we already have for a menu, our healthy options, and having, a marketing program to go along with that. So that's the goal, to come up with additional menu innovations and promote those healthy choices that will, that were identified in the Advocate report. We propose to hire a nutrition outreach consultant, and this would be a pilot program for the region for school year 17-18. And, it'll be funded through the food service programs. We've looked at the budget and where we are financially this year, and this is sustainable, definitely for the year going forward, and I suspect years ahead of that. The nutrition coordinator, outreach coordinator, would work with the food service program and further efforts to promote the healthy menu items we have, or healthy a la carte items we have, which will in turn feed the children through the school day and keep them ready to learn. And at this point, I'm going to turn over to Jen.
Sure. Okay, so I'm Jen Lawrence. I'm a parent member of the Wellness Committee representing both the School Nutrition Advisory Council and SPAN-DS, and I'm also a member of the Parent Advisory Group of Challenge Success, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. So we became inspired by the idea of this nutrition outreach coordinator during our tour of the Needham schools last spring, and we're really motivated and impressed by the creative and cost-effective and delicious-looking meals that were being served that we witnessed and smelled and wanted to taste. We were really excited by the high participation rates that were across that Needham school district, and we wanted to come back to Dover-Sherborn and share this kind of new and innovative position with our district, so that the hope would be is that some of the great things that were happening in Needham would also happen at Dover-Sherborn. So one of the initiatives that this nutrition outreach coordinator created, and I'm going to kind of get your juices, salivary glands going a little bit before I talk more about the position, is she created this limited time offering meal. And what that was is that every month, one day a week for the entire month, so 4 times a month, she would create a special meal. So it was kind of like a taste test, and she'd have it on display outside of the kitchen before the students would walk in to buy their lunch, with a huge sign saying LTO.
Get it while you can.
Yes, lemon and chicken pasta with asparagus. And so the students could go in and kind of see what they were getting before they actually went in. They knew what the ingredients were, and even students who were not planning on buying lunch could see the visibility of this and smell it and that kind of thing. So it really enticed students to buy this. And so it really was like a work in progress taste test. Some of the other things she did were a salad inspired by Panera Bread that had strawberries and spinach and poppy seed dressing. She did a hummus and like a Mediterranean platter similar to what Janelle is doing with tzatziki and falafel and fresh vegetables and pita. She did, this one sounded like a huge hit, tomato and basil and mozzarella cheese on a ciabatta. So these were all things that were kind of sparking the kids' taste buds. They're sold as a gourmet lunch option, so higher than the typical lunch, 75 cents higher, and it was really working quite well for them. So that's one of the things that really inspired us to bring this program back to DS.
And just so I'll pick up for just a couple of minutes on just more of the innovative ideas that the nutrition outreach consultant had. She was a fireball. She was awesome. So if we could find someone like her, it would be a gift to DS. But the whole idea behind it, so there was the LTO that Jen mentioned, and then on a regular basis, every day, kids had the main lunch option, and then they also had other gourmet lunch options, as well as a salad bar. And it was a really interesting way to just look at how this creativity played to Needham's bottom line in a lot of ways. Bottom line, nourishing the kids, but also bottom line, increasing participation and revenue. Because what they did was they had the main meal and several different ways to make that happen. But then they had a gourmet lunch option, which Jen mentioned was 75 cents more. And then they had a salad bar, which was 50 cents more. So there were all these ways that kids could come in and participate in the lunch program. And the participation rates at Needham really showed that. So it's almost like an opportunity waiting to happen for us. And we really saw that in play in Needham. And so some of the gourmet lunch options were Asian inspired, as you mentioned, kids really love. An orange chicken with broccoli and brown rice. And then they were doing, I think it was a regular available all the time, a shaker salad. So it was almost like, like a clear cup. And then it was, built from the bottom up. There was an Asian inspired, probably because they too know that kids love that. There were Southwestern, there were Mediterranean. There were a lot of vegetarian options that were available in the Needham cafeteria, and that was something that in talking with the nutrition outreach consultant, she said that kids really wanted to see. So again, I think it kind of plays into what we saw matched with what we read in the Advocate report, which is really was encouraging us to think of students as customers and to help bring them in to the lunch program, to nourish them during the school day. We've talked a lot about the school day for a lot of kids is 10 up to 11 hours. They don't leave at 2:15. They're here until 6 or 5:30 or what have you. So the more we can nourish kids during the school day, I think, the better it is. So that goes to the marketing innovation or the menu innovation and the marketing. And then the second big piece of what the nutrition outreach consultant would do is promoting healthy choices. And where that comes into play, or what that would look like, is really twofold. The first thing is the nutrition outreach consultant would be in the cafeteria, interacting with the student. So the way that I think of it is it's kind of like a boots on the ground person. She would be circulating in the cafeteria, and we saw her do this, talking with the kids about their likes and dislikes. Another big part of that are the taste tests. If you're going to roll out a menu option and go to the expense of buying all of the stuff to make it, you want to know that kids are going to like it before you make a huge investment. So the taste tests were a really key part. Another thing is encouraging kids to try new things. For those of us who, we spend a lot of time encouraging our kids to try asparagus. I did think that asparagus in that LTO was a bold option, because that could either go or flop, and who knows, maybe that never made it to the permanent menu. But that was what she was testing out. She was kind of getting kids' temperatures. And then another big part of the promoting healthy choices was something that I don't know that I'm sure she knows about this, but I know that Janelle knows about it. There are these things called smarter lunchroom strategies that are out of Cornell's Food and Brand Lab. And what that is it's basically a group of behavioral change scientists that have tried to come up with ways to understand better how kind of tweaking communication and food display can help kids make different choices. Or forget kids, like grown-ups. You know how if you go somewhere and there's a bottle of water and an apple, well, you're more likely to grab that. But if there's, a Diet Coke and a bag of chips, you might go for that. So yeah, and some days that's great. But it's just understanding like that there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of power in placement and things like that. So that's another thing that the nutrition outreach consultant would do. And if you look, if you go to this Smarter Lunchroom website, my printer's kind of dying on me. So, but anyway, there are all these opportunities to be utilized in the DS cafeteria, and that's what that we're looking for this person to do.
And then I was just going to say one other huge component, which there's a lot of opportunity, is marketing via our the website, the food service website, signage in the cafeteria, e-blast, the video monitors, and creativity. Janelle has a really, really talented staff, so being able to work with the staff on menu selection, recipe creation, recipe redevelopment. They see their customers, they know them, so having someone who can take their energy and kind of repackage it and put it out there for the students. They know those women. They go through that counter all the time. So if Bonnie says, you're really going to like this granola, Johnny, Johnny's going to be more likely to try it. So.
Question? 2 questions. One, I'm assuming that you guys have run the numbers and we can afford this. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it. So I'll take that as something. And then secondly, I know that historically there have been some questions about whether we can support the kind of scratch cooking that is fundamental to some of these kind of programs. Do you guys see any concerns with the physical plant that we have being able to support this program?
Well, as far as like a down the road discussion,
or at least, short term and then medium term.
I think I think that it's always a work in progress. So I think we are where we are with like our footprint of what our cafeteria is. I think, we've talked with Janelle a lot about the equipment, and maybe there might be some, wishes for down the road. But I think even where we are now, and stop me if I'm wrong, but even where we are now, there's a lot of room for positive growth. And then looking forward, one thing we did notice when we went to Needham that differs remarkably from DS is that, we've all walked through that or seen that line. It's basically you're funneled in, and then, it's here and then the counter. So there is no opportunity to kind of scope out. There's no food court kind of feel. And Needham, there's nothing fancy about the Needham cafeteria. It is not high tech. It is not like, I hear about kids who go off to college and it's like this awesome. This is not that. It's like
this room.
It's not fancy
Seriously,
at all,
with counters.
but it's effective. And so I think that as far as looking down the road, if there were potential to create more of an opportunity for kids to scope out what those options were, that would be a terrific thing.
But I mean, in terms of sourcing and product quality, they're using the same kinds of raw materials that we're using at DS. They are on the same bid, the chicken isn't magic chicken, the tomatoes aren't, it's all the same stuff. It's just what they're doing with it, taking a unique look at it.
I think actually staffing plays a bigger role than the equipment in the whole equation. That if you have 4 people calling sick or whatever, then that might limit what you can do. But in summary, again, I think this person would work with me to plan menus, add, hopefully come up with some great ideas for menus to promote health, and to the biggest 2 missing pieces I think that I just can never get to with my many other hats. I mean, even, the website, I post my own menus and do what I can, but with that, what's lacking is the promotion of the healthy choices and the marketing piece, and that's the one that kind of always suffers in school food service.
Is there a motion for us to be considering?
So the motion, I think, would be on agenda item 5, that the nutrition outreach coordinator pilot program proposal for the 2017-18 school year be adopted.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. Is there any conversation, any comments?
I think that was pretty comprehensive.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will say that as an employee of the Needham Public Schools, who eats these school lunches that you guys are talking about most days, the thing that having worked in one of these schools for 8 years now, that has really impressed me talking with the staff is the little things that have made it possible for them to produce with just the same bid food, what I think is a really excellent quality. And I think that we have the potential of being able to do this and putting another hand into the pot who can bring, creativity and have some time to do the things that just aren't doable with the work that you have going on, Janelle, might really make a difference for our kids and for the grown-ups that eat the food as well. So thank you. Thank you for all your hard work.
Laurie, just a couple quick comments. My thanks to the subcommittee of the Wellness Group. They've been dedicated. They've been very persistent. They've done really an outstanding job researching this. We've had some great conversations about how this would be proposed and how we would move forward. I do apologize. I had hoped we missed putting in for you a financial update of the revolving fund as of April 30th. What I would like to share with you, though, is we've had a very robust and successful year. As of April 30th, our fund balance was about $111,000, if I remember that. Maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, 104.
It was there.
Over
No, I think
It was
like
over 100.
110 maybe.
Yeah. Well, 111, 110.
Yeah, exactly.
And our participation has gone up just a little at the high school. Clearly, the adjustment in the prices that were approved last year has contributed to that. But I think that the trend has reversed itself in terms of the revolving fund balance. So that's excellent news. I think that as a pilot program, this is a very small investment that has the potential to yield some really positive results. So I have, yes.
A year for the region, is it like 300,000 of sales over the year, or how much in food sales?
Increase in sales?
No, just how much, what
it's-
gross is.
No, our sales are in the over $500,000, in the high fives after 8 months.
So
of
small
operation.
uptick in increased participation as
Oh,
well.
exactly.
well in
Every
excess of-
1% is
And
meaningful.
we've had a large adult increase this year at the regional with the middle and high school too.
I assume we have a mechanism for any students who are on free or reduced lunch to also allow those students to participate in higher quality. I mean, if we do end up with two-tier pricing.
We don't limit
Okay, perfect,
options.
great, good to know.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
Okay, now Mr. McCullough, would you like to talk about the proposed upgrade to the snack shack?
Thank you, Lori. I won't say a lot. I hope that you found the packet of information comprehensive and thorough. What I would say is, I'm, as you can see from my memo, I'm clearly recommending that you approve the boosters proposal. It looks like a great project. Their goal is, in proposing this, is to be able to generate additional revenue. And we know that that revenue comes back to our DS students. So that's certainly worthy. The one thing I would add, and certainly I think the recommendation language that I have is the could form the basis of a motion, if that's what you choose to do. There has been some discussion. I did have the opportunity to meet with Chris Robbins, and there's been some conversation with the Dover building officials, and it appears that the requirements, if any, are very limited, but that the superintendent's office, over the next 3 weeks as they gear up, will provide oversight to ensure that if there are any town of Dover permits or fire safety requirements that are necessary, we'll make sure that those are obtained and are being followed before construction begins.
Terrific.
Can I just add that we did contact our insurance company about this project, and they'll send out a rep from their loss control program once it's sort of in process, just to give us any other pointers that we need to take care of for insurance reasons. So we'll cover ourselves on that end also.
Were they expecting it to affect premiums?
This is, from what I described, no, but without seeing it, they want to come up to a site visit, and they mentioned that they'll make sure if you're having grills under a covered area, that there's a fire extinguisher nearby. So they'll put all the little nice things that we should have in place. There'll be a guide for us to make sure we put it all in place.
It's terrific.
And this is not in competition with the cafeteria.
No.
There's not, just to be
Good point,
clear.
though.
Exactly.
Hanging on the wings of this nice presentation.
That's right.
Great. Any other questions? Okay.
I'd be happy to make a motion.
So are we
So we need to.
accepting a donation? Is that
Yes.
the?
Yes, they're making the improvement for the campus.
Right,
Right.
yes.
So I guess I will make a motion that we approve the DS Boosters proposal to upgrade the snack shack.
I'll second. All in favor? Great, thank you very much.
Fabulous.
A monthly financial report.
Please.
Thank you, guys.
Turn it very quickly over to Ms. Vittori.
So really quickly, I just have positive news and positive news and positive news.
Oh, I love that.
But just a couple of updates on the revenue side. I slightly adjusted the positive variance on Chapter 70 based on the state changing our payments for enrollments in charter schools and school choice. We had a decline in both of those arenas, which then gave us more money, which resulted in about $18,000 more. So instead of 137, it's now about 156,000 positive variance. In addition, we did encumber interest income on an investment that we have that pays in December and June. So rather than telling you about it in September, we've encumbered $10,000 in interest. So that's now reflected on your revenue statement. And we're expecting to receive the final Chapter 71 payment, which should have our prior year adjustment in it, probably in the next 10 days. But right now, your financials do not reflect the prior year adjustment. At this time, we've been talking about the transfers in and out, and I'd like to formally request that the school committee make a motion to not initiate those transfers. I don't know if we need to provide any additional information, but you will be able to tell from your revenue report that the $20,000 that we were going to transfer from the building funds is almost canceled out by the parking revenue of almost $19,000 that would go out. So that really has no financial impact on not making it. It just makes our accounting much cleaner to leave it as is. And as we've already mentioned on the athletic revolving funds, it actually doesn't have enough money to make that transfer, and then transferring anything would deplete that account, so that's another recommendation. So that is a motion that I'd like the committee to consider. I do have one correction on the total projected revenue variance. It's $278,000. The $18,000 I did later and forgot to change it, so I apologize. But it's $278,000 versus $260,000.
And that includes choosing not to bring 45,000
exactly
into revenues this year that we previously budgeted.
Correct.
And those monies are left in the athletic revolving, which didn't have the balance,
Right.
and the
Building.
the other
which-
account, yeah, I didn't quite understand
So
what
the
the building
building,
fund
so
is.
what we normally do on the building is we bring 20,000 in, but anything over on parking that is in excess of what we budgeted goes into the revolving fund, so we make a transfer out. So you see where you said 18,000, so it really
Yeah.
is in and out. So what we did for next year, for fiscal year 18, is we bumped up parking
Yeah.
and got
So,
rid of the
but
transfer.
the building fund itself just collects rental revenue, is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we ever disperse out of that building fund?
We do. One thing that does get dispersed out of there is any custodial services for those events.
For those events?
Yes.
And then occasionally, I mean, that was one of the options,
then
you
the
had to
carpet.
pay for the exactly.
So does this, so the fact that there's zero, does that mean that, silence everything?
Sorry, I don't know what it's
Rookie,
doing.
rookie mistake.
You
I never had my phone ring, okay.
So does this mean, so it, I guess I'm confused by the zero, which I probably should have asked before. Does that mean that we have not been booking any building rental?
No,
Or,
it's a separate fund. The building, you don't see the rentals on here. The only thing you see in the general fund is the transfer of the 20,000 from the building. So when you get your quarterly revolving funds, that's where you see all the rental revenue going in, and the custodian expense going out, and anything else going out. So it's just a funding mechanism. So all the rental revenues go into the revolving funds.
right, got it. So, because we've had discussion at Boosters before about field rental fees as we start thinking about down the road, any sort of replacement of, and because it's not tagged anywhere, it's hard to, like, there's always discussion about, well, what do you mean we can't say X dollars have been raised by rental of that field, therefore X dollars should go towards, it's confusing for,
So that goes into the building revolving
Right.
fund.
Right.
And it's a mixture of the fields, which aren't as
No.
big of as the auditorium.
right.
Could we create a sub-account within that building fund that is a
Tracks the
legitimate
fields.
way to potentially accumulate over time funds that would offset the day that we
That
do
would
need
be
to
something
replace
that
that
the
truck?
committee
That
could
would be,
decide, right.
that's
To
legally
designate
within.
those.
Yes.
Right, that would have been a
Well,
smart
that's the
thing to
first
do
thing.
in 2012 when
Well,
that came online.
But obviously, we're coming out, we
Right.
don't have a free cash statement, but I think where you're going to, the next round of good news is on the expense side, which then means we have funds.
Yes. And it is perfectly legal to do that. And while you're going down this pathway, you may also want to consider, although to start thinking about it, and based on what happens perhaps next year, but looking at the lunch revolving accounts and doing a similar, thinking along similar lines in identifying a certain amount that could go towards capital replacement of equipment in the kitchens.
It'd be a
Good
really
thought.
smart thing to do.
So I think it makes sense, just because there's a couple of motions in this arena, to take it as we come upon it, so.
Okay, is there a motion to?
Not
Not
initiate.
initiate.
Does it really need a motion?
Yeah, because it's in the budget.
Okay.
Approved
Okay,
it.
I'm just.
For the
double checking.
record, so we have it for the record.
Got
I
it.
did run this by the treasurer, so we
Right.
did say we needed.
Okay, so it's just that paragraph, to not initiate the budgeted transfers from the athletic revolving fund of 25,000 and the building rental fund of 20,000, including the related transfer out of excess parking fees to the building fund. That is the motion.
Yes.
Okay,
So moved.
I second.
perfect. Okay, all in favor?
Perfect.
Moving on to expenditures, I really am not a whole lot new to report. Salaries are holding at about 65,000, but it's the end of the year where we start closing out encumbrances and stuff, so we have something more to report for you when you get your first report in September. We've already identified about 30,000 of operating expenses that we know are going to be positive variance. So there's about 100,000 that we know is going to be a positive, that we've identified, it's going to be a positive operating variance. However, I can tell you, I think there's gonna be other, we can't make that projection right now. But based on that, we're bringing forward 3 items to consider, for the committee to consider to be expended in fiscal year 17, because we do think we have the funds and it makes sense. The first one is, we do know we have some longevity payments for educators who are retiring this year. The way we changed the contract to cover ourselves in the budget, we budgeted it in for next year. But I think it makes sense with all the contract things we have going on to go ahead and pay that this year since we have the money. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we've had a request from our Director of Technology to accelerate the high school laptop rollout, and I'm sure John can confirm that, and same with Dr. Lutiu, that it's a 3-year plan. We did the first year this year. What we'd really like to do is bring fiscal year 19 into fiscal year 17, so that over the summer, they're able to actually complete the whole rollout. So every high school teacher would have their laptop with a docking station. Right now, a third of the teachers do, and it would take us 2 more years to get everyone on board. And they're the last building in the whole district to sort of do this rollout. So that's estimated to be $16,200. In addition, if you look closely at the grant that we were just awarded, they did not award us the furniture and supplies that we put in there. They've given us other things, but not that. So we'd like to go ahead and purchase what the high school needs for that program in fiscal year 17. So those 3 requests total $39,800.
Are those, is that 10,000 startup cost, or is that an ongoing?
No, one time.
This furniture.
Perfect.
Probably some computer.
So all 3 recommendations are one time.
Does the acceleration of the laptops get it to the point where each teacher has a laptop accessible to them?
Yes, but in the fall, they each have one.
Okay.
And what's the process in place for then providing updated laptops as they become antiquated?
Anthony has a replacement cycle, a 5-year replacement cycle for each of the buildings.
But does this then
Yes.
mess that up because
It
then they're
does
getting?
not, it does
No.
not.
Okay.
He has probably already adjusted as soon as he finds out.
What the laptop rollout really does is it replaces desktop units that teachers are now using.
So specific to his budget, right now, it looks like he has a favorable variance of 25,000. So in effect, it looks like we're just using some of those funds, and I think that's great, and I want to support that. I'm just curious, what did we think we needed that we ended up not spending the 25 on
In the
this
network.
year?
Yeah.
In his expense budget.
So some of it was the E-rates. A little bit of it was the E-rate, but it used to, we could check now, it's
Yeah.
all against his account, so that sits in there. And then there was one big subscription that he decided not to do.
And there was favorable pricing for things that he had predicted,
Okay.
when the tech line supplement was written a year
So
ago.
the nickels and dimes here and there, and he
Yes.
squirreled away quite a bit.
Yes.
Okay. So I get the number 2 and number 3. If we budget the longevity payments for FY18, why aren't we just leaving them in FY18 so that we get a consistent treatment of those?
I think in this one, doesn't like that.
Yeah, I think that it just gives us more flexibility in FY18. But in my experience, the language that was changed in the contract last year provided us the opportunity to be very clear about what our expenses would be. And we would not be we're no longer in the position where we have to debate, should we budget 5, should we budget 10, whatever. But in the practice in most districts around these kinds of expenditures, go along with what we're recommending. If at the end of the year there are funds available, I would say it's common practice to utilize current year funds to write those checks and pay them out of FY, the current year. And again, it gives us more flexibility going into FY18 in case we run into unforeseen
Snow.
expenditures.
So,
We had a community comment?
With the replacement of desktops with laptops, apparently then the desktops still have some useful life in them. Is there any plan, any possibility of using that value that is still in them? Are they going to be distributed elsewhere in the school, or what's happening?
Karen?
Yes, that is true. He actually has a plan for that. I haven't specifically spoken to him about what the plan is for these additional 16 or 18. But Anthony has ideas about where they'll be placed in each of the areas of the school.
And some of them are in very useful ways.
so then to bring this back to the topic of other things like, reserving for future athletic fields and all, since we don't have an E&D projection, are we potentially going to entertain a piggyback discussion after the joint meeting or before the joint meeting at the end of this month? Because wouldn't we need to make decisions by June 30? I'm presuming that right now, we're in a situation where our E&D will once again be pushed over the 5% limit.
It will, but legally, that discussion does not have to happen before June 30th.
Does.
No, and frankly, I think it's best if the discussion actually happens after E&D is certified, because then you know what the number actually is, and then the committee has a discussion about what you're going to do with those funds.
But I thought once we were certified over 5%, we're under an obligation to remit those excess funds to our supporting
But I think
towns.
that's basically how we operate, that discussion would happen anyway. I mean, the towns can tell you that we want you to put it into this. It makes
No, but
sense.
I didn't think we had a choice once we were certified.
That's what you said last year, that it
Yeah.
was mandated that it had to be dispersed back to the towns.
Once it was certified?
Well, before
I
it
don't
was
remember.
certified, that's why we
I-
spent so
Yeah.
much energy
No, it-
trying
It was
to.
so, hectic last year, I think, right?
Oh, well, that wasn't quite my recollection of why the funds were dispersed prior to
You're
June
in
30th.
that rosy shadow of your tenure here, and everything seems wonderful and you've
No,
got some of the
my
exciting moments.
recollection and understanding of why the regional committee in June voted to adjust the budget and send money back before June 30th was so that the towns had the opportunity to use those funds for FY17 if they wanted to. So I would want to double check the language around E&D and what the requirements are once it is certified. I guess I'm not sure if, in fact, once it's certified, those funds automatically go back to the town.
Because we did also take those votes in June to accelerate the purchase of the deferred items.
Mhm.
And my understanding is we needed to make those votes in June. We in agreement with, in the spirit of where we got to our FY17 budget, everyone said, okay, we can spend X amount on the textbooks
Right.
and some of those other
Yep.
items.
So purchases you have to, but if you're looking to put money in other funds.
Into a reserve.
That's where I think that you have some latitude.
Yes, that's what I'm talking to.
You're not buying anything, you're parking the money someplace
No.
else that then you have.
We go back
discussed with the town.
3 years, the RTRF or whatever that thing was, that was still a June decision, because that was, I think, Dan, I remember being pulled into that
Well,
in
and that
May.
you were establishing the funds.
Right. So I guess it's just, can we just make sure
No, we'll
that
get
we
we'll
don't,
get an
that
answer to
suddenly
that
July
question.
1st comes and we go, oh, we didn't do
So
that.
The other
Remember
thing I
that.
wanted to add then to all these positive numbers is remember that we, when we approved the fiscal year 18 budget, we accelerated the last payment on the band. So there will be 195,000 flowing through your June financial statements that will take some of the operating positive variance away. So that's how you're sort of using your E&D, is that you're shrinking what potentially.
And what was our final E&D number for the next budget?
For the next, what we're using for
What we,
E&D.
yeah.
The one-
No, 137.
137, right.
So
a
that's
little bit where-
effectively down from where we
Yes.
were.
Right.
And that's gonna release funds.
And I'm not suggesting by saying that you can have this discussion after, if that's what is legally allowed, that you not send that money back to the two communities. I'm just suggesting that it's, I felt last year thought we had a pretty good handle on where we were and where we were going to end up. But I think it's really helpful when you're having these kind of discussions, again, if the law allows this, to understand exactly how much you're talking about. What the amount is, and then you can make that determination. So we'll get that question answered.
Worst case, we could piggyback something in June. Otherwise, it makes sense if it's strictly for a reserve conversation.
Yep. Yeah, there is time to do that.
extend that.
Yep. We'll
And I
get
had
into
a
that.
conversation with Jim Eckert too, the treasurer, bouncing some ideas on it, so everyone has been thinking about it, but there didn't seem to be any urgency to do anything at tonight's meeting in this regard.
Okay.
Except make the motions and.
Is there any more conversation, or should we have anyone want to make the motions? Okay. So the first motion would be to.
I think we can do it all in one motion.
I can
Okay.
give you the total, so if you just want to say as presented for 30.
Actually, do you have language that we should?
Yeah, we don't have any language.
I didn't type it because I figured this one was pretty. So I
Okay, so go for it.
You approve the purchase of the 3 items as noted for a total of $39,800 using fiscal year 17 funds.
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Don.
Oh.
And there's one more item? Oh,
Excuse me. Kathy,
So can I just ask for
yeah.
clarification, when does E&D get certified? Can you remind us when that occurs?
There's not a set date.
Well, generally.
Yeah, generally, this last year, I think our ED was certified in the middle of August. That's when we sent our packet off, and I think we got back. Within less than 2 weeks, we got, because we were on the early end, so we got a pretty quick turnaround. But we have to close our books, we have to do, just a lot of accounting, and then we send our package to the DOR, who then has goes and reviews our files and sends us a certification letter.
So can I just say what I think you just said, which is that you anticipate going over your E&D?
There's potential there.
There's potential, okay. And you won't know for sure until August.
Correct.
And then what would be the plan of action about talk? I'm thinking from a very practical point of view that our finance group doesn't typically meet in August. In fact, most of us are out of town. So I'm just thinking ahead, at what point would you have a conversation about managing that money? Because I think, quite honestly, the Dover committee would like to have a conversation about that if there is going to be an excess and give you some feedback and some ideas.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen in August.
Right.
So, right, it just won't.
You're just encouraging us to
And I
schedule
would
it
not
then.
personally necessarily want to see that money, go a route that was obligated. It was obligated to go by law if there were other options for that. And obviously I won't be on the warrant committee, but I think that
Yeah.
we have had a strong interest in seeing some other things happen, like OPEB, Bing Ding. So I think that we would want to engage with our colleagues and you all in the right time frame about creative ways to meet some outstanding goals. And so that's the only reason I'm asking
Right.
about how you imagine proceeding.
So the first thing we're going to do is clarify
Yeah, right, I understand.
what the rules are around
Yeah.
what happens, what is legally required of the funds once E&D is certified.
Right.
If we find that the answer is, once it's certified, there's no other recourse other than sending the money back to the towns, I think what that will do is generate activity to schedule a meeting and a discussion
Okay.
early on, either sometime in June, later on, or very beginning of July. If the answer is no, there are some opportunities to delay decisions about any excess of E&D,
Yeah.
then my sense is, early September is probably a good time to do that, unless the regional committee, thinks there's a better time. But clearly the summer, I agree with you, is not the best time to schedule that kind of a discussion. But I would say that we certainly would want to have that discussion with both warrant and advisory participating in it.
But absent the conversation I thought we were going to have studying unfunded liabilities, I guess, to set expectations, I don't think on a whim we should say we should put X number of dollars into an OPEB if that was even available.
And I'm
So I
not
think just
suggesting
that's-
that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that.
I'm just saying the
that-
conversation would be an important one
Yeah.
to have before
'cause a year
we are
ago.
surprised with a rebate.
Yeah, but a year ago, we had said if we were to address that, we should do it in a both financial committees and regional context, and a year's transpired and nothing has been initiated. I don't know exactly why that has occurred, but I'm not comfortable with suddenly throwing something like that on the table at the last minute.
That's
not
just an
having
example,
followed that
Michael. That's
process.
just an example
Yeah,
of a
okay.
potential
Right.
option.
Yeah.
And-
Okay,
and-
just.
No, I think,
To set expectations
no, I think
for
you're both right, but
everyone.
just to kind of pursue that a little further, there's a lot that has to happen on the region level. Let's just say that a committee has already met, and they've already decided we need to go down the road of putting aside money, to follow the general accounting rule to start funding the liability. There would, once that decision is made, there's some time and some planning in actually moving forward to set up a trust, because that's how you have to do it. I think there is an opportunity as an intermediary step. I think we need to ask this question, but the regional committee could set up some kind of a stabilization account to park funds there, with the understanding that if that is the ultimate decision to set up a trust, which I think is coming.
We always
I
have the
think.
RTRF as a place to park things.
Well, there we go. That there's a general understanding that once a trust is established, that money, moves to that fund. But but we need to answer that other question
And the
first.
stabilization fund is something that the treasurer's looking into, because that's a new option for regional school districts now with the modernization. So that was an option, and like Bill said, that could park any money we have until decisions can be made, but that obviously would be an agreement of the towns if that's something that you would be comfortable with the regional.
Okay. So there's one more item under financial report. So in your packet was a memo regarding the, that committee, that acronym is ACED. For FY18 recommendations, we provided you a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet represents the requests that were received by the ACED committee by October 1st last fall. The committee met on a couple of occasions, worked through the process that's outlined in the contract, and came up with some recommendations on adjustments. The decision was made by me to then hold off on making any recommendations to the school committee until the contract negotiations were settled. And as it turns out, there's an item in the tentative agreement that has kept all of the Appendix C stipend amounts the same for FY18 as they were for FY17, subject to an MOU where there is an agreement to study all of the Appendix C stipends, to do a complete review of them, and then based on that review, make some decisions on whether further adjustments need to be made. whether stipends will be eliminated, whether stipends will be adjusted, either up or down, et cetera. So my recommendation, you'll notice, is with the exception of 3 recommended adjustments, I'm recommending that that you not fund the other adjustments, but with the exception of the swim dive assistant coach, the Tufts Inquiry Program, and the Washington DC trip coordinator. I struggled frankly with this a little bit because of the agreement that is in place for the new contract. But in really looking at this, those 3 positions, those have been, most especially the DC trip and the swim dive assistant coach, that's a function that somebody has been doing for a number of years, but there's been no payment for those roles. In terms of the dive coach, there's been a parent volunteer for the last 4 years who has taken on that role, happened to have been a diver in college himself. So those are my recommendations. I think that that if you approve those 3 pieces, those will also be, even though we would fund those for FY18, those would be subject to review, just like all the other stipended positions under the MOU. So they may change, as a result of that or not.
Any discussion?
I have a question, well, definitely one question. You said tentative agreement. Is there something I'm not understanding about the teacher's contract that makes it
No, so what was
continue to be
ratified
tentative?
was the tentative agreement.
Okay.
And that tentative agreement outlines all of the changes and adjustments.
Okay.
Now that it's ratified, those changes now get input into the total collective bargaining agreement.
So this work was going on sort of parallel to or before that also landed
At the
the
same
agreement?
Part of an annual process that came out
Right.
of the
Yes.
last prior contract.
Right.
It was a normal thing
Gotcha.
that they go through.
Okay, thank you.
So the 7,300, how much of that fits within what we projected in our budgets for next year? How much is that possibly incremental?
We did budget for the swim dive assistant. That's included in the athletic budget. The other 2 are not, so we have to pick that up.
And nothing in any of this process is decided to be eliminated for next year?
No, that's right. But the other recommendations for changes under this action will not go forward.
And if we were to approve anything else that was recommended here, does that change the landscape of where they start the negotiations from as part of this MOU?
No, I don't think so. I think they would be treated the same as the 3 that I'm recommending, that they would be subject to, like all of the other Appendix C stipends, they'd be subject to the same review, every other stipended position.
And I mean, the dive one, I understand that's kind of a safety thing, and that, I think, I see that as a little bit of a different category. I'm curious why you said yes to, given that we're going to be discussing this as part of the MOU in the fall.
Right.
Why, it would have been my initial reaction to say no to everything, knowing that we're going to have that discussion in the fall to
Right.
balance out what's new and what is used and what's not used. And so I'm curious why then those 2 were singled out.
So when I went back and was preparing this information for the school committee and reviewed it once again, I went into that process thinking that my recommendation was going to be, don't fund any of these recommended changes. It occurred to me very clearly that the swim dive assistant coach is really more unique than the others. But then when I looked at all the recommended changes, the positions that were recommended, the 2 that have been ongoing for a number of years, where the adults who have been responsible for these activities have not received any payment, where the other activities, at least there is a stipend attached already.
This effectively get them on board to then become recognized as a legitimate.
Right, but we've said no to those before. I mean, we've said no to cheerleading before. We've said no to other things that had $0
Yep, no,
associated with them.
you have, and I.
But the AECD
Yeah.
group recommended that these be considered.
So did some of those other ones.
Yeah, and they recommended the other ones as well. So, I have to be honest with you, I went through the process. If the committee chooses not to recommend the other two, I don't really have a problem with that. One of the pieces of my thinking was that, this group goes through a process, they put time into it. No one really had any idea on what the outcome of negotiations would be. The committee in the past, at least certainly last year, did approve the recommendations of ACED. I think the year before certainly approved. If you didn't approve all that were recommended, you approved most of them. So I think this is just a little message, again, to that group of people that there's perhaps a sense of balance to the recommendations,
Are we in a discussion? So I think looking at the whole list of the requests, I do see a couple other things that were sort of at zero and were not brought forward by you, by your recommendation. And I mean, I think I would make the case regarding the diving program particularly as sort of a separate situation, particularly because where the team practices is not where the divers can practice, and so you actually can't have the same people do both work, practically, safety, time-wise, whatever. But particular to the two programs that you brought forward, they both require teachers to be doing overnight with children. I think that's a little different than a club. I think that in the case of the DC trip, all of our students benefit from that who want to participate in that program, and we're the people who are running it currently now. To choose not to do that work, it would be a big blow to the experience of kids. And I think similarly for the Tufts program, that program involves a pretty substantial time commitment on the teacher's part over a weekend, not to mention the pre-work, which usually happens before school and after school, and is probably, it's a large commitment of time over what, looking at some of these are, after-school clubs, things that just affect a small group of kids. So I think that saying, I think it's a big hole that we haven't been supporting those teachers at that time. And I do, even with respect to that, I know that it's going back into the
I'm not
pot.
disagreeing with that, I'm just saying that you're gonna find yourself saying that every year with
Oh,
what
yeah.
comes up.
No, I understand.
Because it's whatever, the group, that whatever is recommended always sounds really important, which is why I think we need to look at it overall. So I'm not disagreeing with that, I'm just saying it's,
No, but I also look at if those folks who have been running it out of their goodness choose not to, what is the cost to the children? And I think in these situations, it's pretty big.
So let's first, I think there's a distinction in that the Tufts program is a substantive, academically oriented enrichment that the two teachers have been doing volunteer now for how many years?
One teacher over 20.
Yeah, so I think that should be considered on its own merits. I think on the DC trip coordinator edition, those are being done by people who are in a team leader position, which is also on its own right receives.
Not
Team leaders don't get
It just so happens they are team leaders. That's
It's
something
not a
above
given.
and
Not
beyond.
part of their responsibility
Just
as
as the
team
CAGs,
leaders to
the
do that.
eighth grade team leaders take on well beyond the expectations of a team leader.
So you feel that the team leader position in its own right, the scope has changed and that will be a part of this MOU process?
It could be.
No, I think
I
the
mean-
DC trip coordinator is a separate entity than the team leader position.
In this
Okay,
packet,
but I
it
see
talks
it.
about them being.
Yeah, it says
the team
significant
leaders.
amount of planning, added responsibility to team leader positions. That's why I'm, that's
but
why
They don't necessarily have to be the team leaders.
okay.
it hasn't been in the past.
It has been those two individuals who happen to be team leaders. But it could be others that would take responsibility for that trip. It does not have to be the team leaders.
So I
Yeah,
take
so it's hard for me to understand that particular situation since it's being commingled in a position that would be considered part of this MOU process. But I think there's a clear case where the Tufts, that should be recognized now so that it can hence is on the board with everything else. That's why I bring up the question of, is there any of these others that truly deserve our endorsement to be hired, so, to be increased, so that they're being on the board at the level that everything else should be. I mean, I think
I think
that's.
Maggie's point about being overnight, it also puts them in a different category. I think that's an excellent point.
Yes. And
Well, no, actually, this is completely, it's related, but not much. If there are two people listed, so like for the Tufts, does that mean? They split that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why it's a two rather than a one.
No, it just means.
And I think it's important for clarity's sake to understand the process, and if you do, I apologize, but the way the process works is that the superintendent convenes the committee. Superintendent doesn't vote on any of these initial recommendations. So the staff and administrative members of the ACED committee, in this case, considered 24 requests. After their review and work, they recommended changes to 6 of those. So my responsibility in bringing this to the school committee was really to opine on the way I see the process as it's laid out in Appendix C, to opine on the 6 positions that the ACE committee made recommendations on adjustments, so that's what I attempted to do. So while I may agree that of some of the 24 activities that have not been receiving a stipend, perhaps are meritorious of receiving one in the future, the committee has already made that decision, so to speak. And having gone through this now for 2 years, I can tell you that there are requests, that the same requests that do cycle through, and eventually some get funded and some do not.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Should we consider these individually or?
Should we straw man?
I don't think it
Well,
matters.
why don't we make a motion for all 3, so that all 3, we approve the
Swim dive,
Conception.
Tufts Inquiry Program, and the Washington DC trip coordinator be funded for fiscal year 18, based on that MOU.
No, you don't
No,
need the amendment.
no.
Based on,
No.
okay.
For fiscal 18. So I'll second it, and then someone could make an amended motion if you want to divide them up.
Got that?
Can I, sorry, this is part of the discussion part of the motion. Is the MOU given like a dollar amount and then told you can split this up any way you can, or is it's however much you feel you need? So, okay.
That's what makes it challenging. And
So you have to-
historically, we don't take nothing comes off, it only gets added
Well,
on.
We were in a process in the past where this would have come to us before our budgets were prepared, so we were getting this information at a relevant time, and then we could say, well, yeah, we like these recommendations, but we only have X. Then it comes to us to choose whether to either not take the recommendation or defund something that they had previously approved, that we decided we want Tufts over something else I'm not going to say.
Right.
Because I'll get people.
Right. So
Right.
so remember, this is a new process that began with the contract that just is ending. And in the first year, the way it was explained to me was that when the committee meets, all of these stipended positions get posted in the spring. And by the time we get to October, we have a sense of whether, in fact, all of the budgeted stipends have been filled and if there's money available in the current year. And I know that not last year, but the previous year, there were recommendations for some adjustments to happen immediately. And that was because there were funds available. This year, that was not the case. So that's why the recommendations were for FY18. And then in terms of bringing these, last year, they were brought during the budget process so that they could be budgeted. This year was just a different kind of a year because of the process we were going through.
Any more discussion? Yeah, okay. All in favor? Motion passes.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you for the committee. It is a lot of work.
At what point, Bill, in the year should we expect to hear back from the newly generated group that's going to review these stipends?
Was that in our packet
Was it?
somewhere?
Yes. Is it in there?
It's in the red after the
It was,
chart.
yeah,
Oh,
it was,
actually,
I
that's
included
where
it
I
in
am.
the,
Yep, gotcha.
yeah, so there are some
By
specific.
December 30th.
Yes,
Thank you,
there's
sorry.
specific-
No,
My
no,
bad.
With final recommendation by February
Yes.
15th.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Can we ask that they review, or do they review? Because you said they tend to not take things off. Is part of their.
Oh,
Yes.
isn't the whole
Yes,
intent,
it's
is
the
a
whole
whole,
Full review.
Yes.
well, and even things that
And it's
are
a
on
different
there,
committee that's being put together.
Oh, okay.
There's a,
So there'll be 3 school committee representatives, 3 union representatives, and it's a thorough review of the whole Appendix C.
and if something's a 6 and another's a 4 or 3,
Okay.
they'll go through a thoughtful process that looks out at the market and
Exactly.
relative,
No. Yeah,
internally consistent and externally consistent.
Yep, the intention is to do some comparative analysis as well.
Oh.
It's delightful to hear that a move afoot to reconsider the whole stipend position. Is in fact the charge of this committee to consider it how in fact this entire decision-making process is done? Or is the charge merely to tweak things to make sure that they are roughly, because that seems like what the advisory committee does anyway, so I'm not quite sure what this MOU is all about.
So the MOU is an effort to do a couple of things. The first is to develop a list of stipends that reflect what's currently going on. If you go through the Appendix C list, there are many stipends that are no longer used, and so that was one piece to just clean that all up. The second piece is to do a comprehensive analysis based on what is happening in the schools that we compare ourselves to. Are we in line? And there was a little bit of work done on that as part of the negotiations, and there was some information that suggested that, you know, there's a lot of discrepancy there. So this will be an effort to work with the DSEA in being able to, in my opinion, prioritize and reallocate where necessary, you know, the funds that are being budgeted for these positions. And then to determine in the end whether in fact the process that was agreed upon 3 years ago, does that process make sense, or should that process be tweaked? Because that's part of the Appendix C language as well.
In the spirit of clarification here, is the intent, once they have a firm recommendation, is that to also impact FY18 or only the last 2 years of the contract?
It's a very good question.
Excellent question.
That's fine.
My sense is that the timing is set up so that it will be for discussion and adjustments for FY19 based on what comes out of that.
And my gut says that this is a 95% region, 5% local issue. Will the makeup of that committee of teachers and school committee members also reflect the composition of the MOU?
Yeah, to be honest, that really wasn't part of the discussion, and I would suggest that percentage is probably more 98%, 2%. I know you were.
So
But I
we'll
always
talk
have to
about
be more
that at the
precise.
joint meeting then to clarify, because
Sure.
I do feel
That's a good idea.
not often do I want to push the locals aside, but I think in this situation, this is really our
Right, so
our
for
domain.
3 school committee members, it may make sense to have 2 from the region and 1 from the local, as opposed to
Yeah,
1 from
and,
each.
and of the 4 teachers, I'd like to think that at least 2 would be from the high school and 1 would be from the middle school, and if we feel there's a need for elementary representation, do that 1, otherwise 3 from the high school and 1 from the middle school.
Yeah, that,
So that you can do a
we can have
broad
that
mix
discussion.
of teachers who have a sports interest versus those who
Yeah.
have club interest versus some of the academic, oriented.
that makes sense to proceed in that way.
And the administrators, you guys can say, come on, it's yours.
I'll appoint before I
I'll throw Bob that.
Well, John's already to jump on all over that one.
Okay, so we're comfortable to move on to item number 8.
So approval of the handbook. You received information at the last meeting. Changes were very minor. So it's on the agenda tonight for your formal approval.
I will move that we accept as presented.
Any discussion?
So there's nothing new here,
No,
right?
Seen it all.
We beat this
Oh.
to a pulp unless any of our new members would like to join in on any of these items.
I was able to read the changes, and I'm making some assumptions about why they make sense, and I'm trusting that your careful scrutiny will suffice.
Or if I may, just for,
Yeah.
so the handbook changes for the high school are predominantly to fall in line with what our policy is. So Claire, Graham, and I sat down, we did some work, so $300, that was just the increase, so we had to change that. And the other piece of it was set up as a result of last year, the regional school committee approving the paving and creation of additional spaces. What that has now done, it's been great. It has enabled our students to park really without a lottery. And so we have some additional revenue, but then it has also really benefited students and families to be able to have those spots. So we just wanted language in there to specify that we probably won't have to do a monthly lottery. We could separate it into chunks if we even have to do one. And then second of all, we just wanted to clarify that sophomores may be allowed, but only once the seniors have left campus permanently.
Perfect sense.
You had a sophomore that had a compelling family issue.
We did.
You still have that as flexibility to consider.
Yes, that's correct.
those.
Terrific. Okay.
Did we vote on that? Did we vote already?
No.
You didn't vote? Okay.
All in favor?
Thank you, guys.
Okay, item number 9, the school improvement plans.
So I'll let John and Scott just speak briefly to these, but remember that I forget where this has been discussed, I apologize for that, but the intent here is that the school improvement plans for 2017-18 really will be, encompass, in this case, encompass the ELA curriculum review cycle for the upcoming year. The social emotional learning wellness will be reflected in a district document that you'll receive in the joint meeting. And that these may seem thin, but that's because the number one goal for next year will be to support the superintendent's entry and strategic planning process, which will be time-consuming and will take a lot of effort and will require the support of all four of the schools. So I just wanted to provide that context, and we'll be talking more about that at the joint meeting. And Dr. Keough will be at the joint meeting, and we'll do a presentation for you all about the entry plan and that, and what will come of that in terms of the strategic planning process.
Thanks, Mr. McCollum. So for the high school, similar to the middle school, we are going to have a district goal actually around cultural responsiveness.
Right.
And it will have probably some different tweaks depending upon the school, but a lot of the same patterns will certainly show themselves. So for us, one thing we want to do is we want to get some baseline data. We want to kind of get a sense of where we are, where our students and our parents and our faculty feel that we are with regard to cultural responsiveness across, gender, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status, lots of different things that we think that would be really relevant for us to tackle. We think that it's in our local society, it's globally there, present, and it's really important, I think, that we create systems that help educate our educators so that they in turn can transfer the proper information, knowledge, discussions that take place so that we can have healthy discussions and then help students sort of sift through things to make sense of what is happening, culturally. We're starting to shift a little bit from a cultural standpoint. We don't have a lot of diversity, yet our students do have access to the diversity, whether it be through trips they take and things that they engage in, community service, clubs, etc. There's some access to that. So for us, we feel like that's a big piece, and I see it under a larger umbrella. We have a student group called The Conversation, which is fantastic. It's a number of students who will bring up major topics to discuss. Faculty members come and join in, but faculty members are not there to facilitate. They are there to participate, and it's actually the students who run it, which is great. We're looking at things around the issues of teen dating and teen violence. We have had a group from I Swear, which was incorporated a couple years ago. There's a group now that really wants to sort of regenerate that, and we've given them some guidelines as to how they can do that. We see that fitting in. The Roots and Wings program, working with our Medco director, Ms. Monique, and then also we have received a grant through DSEF around having difficult conversations, and that's part of the educators training. So it's about educating our kids, but it's also about helping to provide tools for our educators so that they can be prepared to have these discussions in a manner that is appropriate for a public school, that's appropriate for the age group that they are addressing at the time, whether it be middle school students, high school students, freshmen as opposed to seniors, lots of different things. So that's one. Our second one, as Mr. McCall had indicated, is our English curriculum review cycle. Science and technology had begun this year, so they will be in their second year, looking at some implementation of their action plan. English will be working on that. And the third is to support the transition plan for Dr. Keough and Ms. McCoy coming in. Now, in addition, there'll be other things that we'll still continue having as initiatives, Challenge Success, but we look at some of those things such as Challenge Success, the implementation of the 2020 NEASC standards, accreditation standards, as things that are part of our expectations and duties to be doing anyway, so they don't have to be a specific goal, but those will be things that we will be developing through professional development. So in a nutshell, that's what the high school is looking at.
Can I just ask really quickly, is part of that, because I assume that the online culture is part of what's going to be
Yes.
looked at with this? Okay.
Yes, interesting you mentioned that, because we had, unfortunately, because of snow, we were supposed to have Kathy Greer, right, Kathy? Katie Greer, come and talk. So that has been rescheduled for the fall, and Ann Keegan has been coordinating with Scott Bryan and the elementary schools. So yes, absolutely. She's going to come and discuss the impact of social media, really where is it today, how is it impacting, and how is it impacting us from a culturally responsive manner, both positive and negative. So yeah, absolutely, that would be part of it.
Just really quickly, one of the things that have been thought about, access for students who are already involved in other things, so like they couldn't participate in the Conversations Club, but they'd like to have access to some of those conversations. Is that part of it too, sort of giving more access to more students?
Yeah, so we talked about maybe having some more, maybe having them at different times. We do tend to have them after school, right after school. I'm not comfortable necessarily having them taped or anything of that sort, only because I think, but...
Yeah, no, I didn't mean that. I just meant, like, because if kids are already doing other clubs or things, or even with teachers, and they can't meet, if that's the only, if they always meet after school, that's the only time they meet. There's some kids who...
But isn't that the block right after school a non-scheduled block, like athletics? Do clubs start immediately after school? So I thought athletics
some clubs
gapped.
Do. Athletics gaps.
So the kids
some clubs do.
elect to use the help times available.
Correct, but some clubs do, because some of our kids want to be in clubs and still play a sport.
Okay.
Yeah.
With regard to the conversation, that's a group that was started by students, and
Yes.
did they pick the time for their schedule?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
They did.
So I guess to your point, I think that it sounds like the school would definitely support if other students wanted to do it at another time, that they could organize themselves, just in the same way these kids organize themselves at a time that worked for the organizers, that maybe doing a different group that could meet before school or whatever, that it sounds like that they would get support.
That's fine, but
Yeah.
the kids have to realize that that's
Right.
an opportunity
Right.
for them. I was just sort of,
So I think
so
it's
the
a
conversations are
right.
happening, so that there's...
Right, but I think it's a balance between these guys wanting to support student-initiated things. So if student initiates it, then like the adults in the group say, okay, but we also need to offer in the morning. You know what I mean? Like I think that then we need to encourage other students to say, hey, if that was important to you, why don't you do it in the morning, or whatever is going to be a better time for other kids that want to participate. You know?
I can tell you that a couple of the students who did initiate it, morning was not going to be an option. Not because of morning, but literally they are not here. They were METCO students.
I thought you were making a reference to my daughter.
Keep in mind too, with this initiative, we'll also be doing some work whole school as well. So there will be different opportunities, not just, the conversation won't be the only place where these type of conversations or discussion groups can be happening. The idea will be to have them in places where a multitude of students can access it at different times, because we do recognize that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With regards to challenge success, when is the next significant, let's say, report back, this is where we're going, period, going to be for presumably the joint school committees?
Correct. So my recommendation would be the fall, because we just received our results from the survey, and I know that you guys are finishing up, right? They're just finishing up. So we just had a challenge success committee meeting, the full committee, and we reviewed some of the pieces. Anecdotally, I can tell you that in a number of the categories, we actually saw a decrease in some of the negative responses, if you want, sleep is still remained where it is, so but the overall percentages, according to Challenge Success, were very positive. But we're going to decipher that a bit, and we would present that to the joint school committee in the fall. And then from there, we would also bring forward discussions as to our next steps. I can tell you one of the things we talked about in that committee yesterday is having building-based groups, because the K-12 for us works in some ways, but in other ways it's difficult, because the elementary issues may not be the high school issues and vice versa. So we talked about having these cohorts of educators in each building meeting on a regular basis, and then reporting out 3 to 4 times to the larger group as a whole, and then subsequently communicating with the joint school committees.
Yeah, it's kind of logical to do it in the fall in conjunction with our leadership changes as well.
Yeah, and we're very excited. Dr. Keogh is going to be actually attending the conference out in Stanford, as is Scott and Ann Keegan. So that will kind of round us off, because Brian Marriage and I both had the opportunity to go. Bob Brown did, and Laura, right? Yeah. And the high school and the middle school each have 2 educators.
In addition to Wellesley, and I think a couple other districts, is there another round of schools in Mass, in the Boston metro area?
Yes.
Okay.
So we were just asked, we have to finalize the plans, we were asked by Challenge Success to actually host the first East Coast Conference in May. And so Dover-Sherborn was asked, which is fantastic. We accepted, but we have to work out the logistics. Michael, to answer your question, as many as 10 schools in the East Coast will be engaged in this process beginning next fall. So it's great.
Terrific, thank you.
Our goals are essentially, we're carrying them over, but changing some of our the benchmarks that we have. The first goal has to do with learning for all students, and we're going to continue our work with Ann Larson. It looks as though her time at the middle school might be less next year, because the monies that we have to bring her in to consult with us, there'll be a need at the high school, because there'll be a new LBLE teacher there. But she still will be available to middle school to consult. And also, Brian Maringer and a group of teachers have done a lot of research and work around RTI, response to intervention, and we're looking for ways to be able to provide support for students within our schedule. So that's essentially the same goal we had last year, just moving the needle a little bit further. The second goal is around social emotional wellness, and that's where we put, as John mentioned, the cultural proficiency piece. And I mentioned earlier that we're starting Friday with Roots and Wings. The elementary schools have already started to work with Roots and Wings. They have the groups are called Key Squad. So there'll be some 6th graders that will be coming to us that have been trained. So from our group that starts on Friday, and those students will come up with a group of approximately 35 students to continue to work with Tabitha from Roots and Wings and facilitate workshops in MLK Day and then beyond to carry it forward. Another piece that is not captured in here, but it's something we thought about, and it came from Dr. Ledoux, was we were at the last PD committee meeting, and she mentioned a pre-course for through tech and DESE on social and emotional learning, and we're looking to have the staff, it might be less the ELA teachers, because the third goal is around them starting their curriculum review process, but to take the staff and divide them into groups that they normally wouldn't work with, so get a cross section of the school and have them go through this course together, which will promote discussion on how to meet the needs of the various groups. It's very interesting. We talked about it today at the faculty meeting. That is not captured in here, but I think it fits under that goal as well. So those are our 3 goals in addition to supporting Dr. Keogh.
Perfect.
vote to accept them? Is that what we do?
I think we have to
We
approve.
should, yeah, that's,
Vote to
That
accept?
has been your
We have
custom
to.
to.
but that, we have to.
No, the statute was changed a number of years ago.
We're a little slow
So,
back here.
but it's been your custom to approve them, and I think your approval signifies endorsement of the plans.
Great. So a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the middle school and high school school improvement plans.
Second.
Also,
Okay, all in favor?
All right,
Thank you very much.
go get them.
Or if I can make just a couple of comments on the consent agenda, bring to your attention two of the items. The annual reappointment of the district treasurer, that's there in the consent agenda, and we are recommending certainly.
Mr. Gill.
Avoiding,
Yes.
avoiding tornadoes. It's not going to be 107.
Good.
No tornadoes.
Good luck, Scott.
Have fun.
So we certainly enthusiastically endorse the reappointment of Mr. Eger. And then a huge shout out and thank you to the foundation for the 2017-18 grants. We've provided the listing of the grants for you in your packet, $120,000 in grant money. John talked a little bit about it in his report, and this gives you a flavor of how they're supporting our staff and our schools and our students across all 4 schools. So a big thank you to the foundation for that.
can there be one clarification on the report? On number 11, the social studies technology,
In other words, it wasn't funded.
but it also looks like there would have been other things that were proposed that are not listed that weren't funded.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. You want to know why that wasn't funded?
I'm just making,
Just
clarifying.
making, yeah.
My
Because
guess is
when
that
I
they
see-
just
Yeah.
forgot to hide that row.
Okay, when I see 1, 2,
I
4,
would-
6, 7, I'm assuming
I think
3, 5.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I think-
they
Oh,
did
yes,
not
yes,
get
yes.
funded.
Oh, no, there are,
Definitely things, okay.
yes, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, there are definitely some proposals that were
Not
not.
funded.
In terms of the technology, they're
That's
moving
fine, I was
away
just
from
curious.
that. Yeah, yeah, why that, I think that just should have been deleted, like hidden like the others, correct.
Right.
I'm slowing the uptake,
Um,
Michael, every now and then.
Can we hold the athletic donations off of the consent agenda?
Sure.
For discussion purposes?
For discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Do we have a motion excluding the athletic donations to approve the consent?
And do our new members know what a consent agenda is? What-
Yeah.
You do, okay.
Good question. Okay.
I so moved.
So-
Thank you. Second?
Michael, second.
Okay.
Doesn't matter either one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excluding athletics. Okay. Athletics.
So these positions, do these end up in the MOU hopper as
No.
well?
No, these are
Okay.
reimbursed by parent groups for additional coaching that fall outside of the standard coaching staff. That relatively accurate?
Yes,
Okay.
I have an opinion on what should happen, but you may not want to hear it.
I don't know if I want to, since I wrote 2 of these checks, I feel pretty.
No, my opinion is that when the MOU committee meets, if these are positions which I think are very helpful and I'm not at all, I think it's great and we're fortunate that there are a variety of sources that fund this and we really appreciate that. I think it's important though that these positions be part of Appendix C, be listed and identified, because there should be consistency in terms of what the stipend amount is. And because these are paid through, the donations are accepted and the stipends are paid through payroll, which they need to be, there should be an assistant coach of one sport because there's a donation to pay that, shouldn't be higher or shouldn't be less unless the time is less than an assistant position in a like sport. And those, that consistency and those, what's the word I'm looking for, guidelines are already, are outlined as part of the Appendix C listing. And so not everything that is on the listing, I think, has to be funded every year, especially with athletic coaching positions, because participation changes from year to year. But that's my thinking, and I would encourage the MOU committee to consider that.
And I would give the alternative view, which is that I think that year to year, the needs of teams change. So for example, the $700 that was paid for Coach Z is a specific position to help with goalies that isn't standard every year. And I think it could increase the complexity of Appendix C to a level that, with so many teams and different needs every year, and also the market dictates how much sometimes you have to pay to get an assistant coach. I think it could really explode the complexity of Appendix C, in my opinion. But maybe that's a
Duly
discussion we
noted.
should have.
Well,
Yeah, no, I think it
to
would
what
be worth the
extent
discussion.
Would the association even be enthusiastic of having things listed that are not funded out of the general fund budget?
Well,
That, to me, could open up
Yeah,
a can of worms.
well, there's some other practical considerations that the association might be interested in, especially if the people who are filling these positions are staff members. And if they're a staff member who's filling these positions and have been doing it for a long time, the stipends, as long as they are, and this isn't very popular to hear, but stipends that are listed and identified in a collective bargaining agreement are eligible to be, the amount paid is eligible to go towards retirement purposes. If they're not part of the collective bargaining agreement, they are not eligible to be considered.
Right, but of these, there's at least two of them are.
So we don't
The rest
know,
are not.
basically.
No, we
There's
don't.
some variety of,
Yeah.
this could be, it could not.
Yeah,
I
this
just
is
want to
one of
know
those things
before
that, you know,
I voted for it. to-
24 days left, I probably shouldn't have.
No, 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 I see
Yes,
both,
it's a
I see both
conversation.
viewpoints, and I'm at least glad that we got those out there.
Can I add to that, that if you do that, though, that there are positions that are paid through the activity funds,
Well-
the middle school, high school for the drama and musical productions,
Right.
that definitely, I think, need to be looked at because they're not in the same ratio as what's in the
Yeah.
Appendix C, and I think that's
Well,
an
but
issue.
Right. So that's the real issue,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's why I
It's
asked
the
it.
equity of, it's the equity.
Yeah. And I think it can be handled if there are unique circumstances. The language should be written that the administration has the ability to assign somebody to, based on the special circumstance, a goalie. You know, that might be half of what that ratio stipend is, for example. Somebody who, you know, is coaching, but they're there 50% of the time, and that's what works. You know, they should get 50% of what that full-time stipend might have been. So I think there are different ways to look at it, and I think it is something to be considered as part of the discussion.
To me, it feels like there's more merit to having this looked at in a methodical and fair process, and I don't think we have this dynamic in the community at this time, but not subject to who has the most enthusiastic set of parents that will raise the largest set of funds to get the best X, whether it's lacrosse or the musical or whatever. I think it could take off the table that potential dynamic.
Yeah, and DS isn't unique in this regard. I think that there are.
I think if anything, we're not as parents that competitive that I pictured in some communities where there's a strong set that are very behind the arts and another that are behind athletics and a third that's behind sending kids out to Model UN or something.
Or even within the athletic program, there are in some communities, there are very active booster groups that raise a lot of money and can provide, X number of assistant coaches that are really, when you compare them to other programs, are out of the norm. And, I always ask the question, is that fair?
So, can I just quickly, I think that if somebody wanted to go back, regardless of whether you think this should be part of the ACET, ACED, whatever, that it would be helpful if it clarified, like, for goalie coach, or for something specific, if there's a specific thing, so that if someone wanted to go back in a couple of years and figure out what the history was, there'd be a sense, because I don't know if the sailing coach is there because they needed a second sailing coach or because there was a special need that year or what. I think would be good for
Yeah, no,
clarification.
that's right. That's the whole point, is that if we're opening up the
Well, she's
discussion.
saying she wants
This
another line
documentation's
for
not
each of
very
these.
well.
Oh, I see,
Right.
as part of an explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The fact that we actually have names on them, this is the first time we've had names.
Really?
Yes.
So we're moving
And
forward.
probably only the second time we've even had.
Usually it's a Swiss bank account.
Yes.
And it's only been a year since we actually even ran them, or 2 years since we ran them through this.
Oh, it's like under the table.
Yeah.
No.
So do we,
Of course it was.
so do we feel comfortable now voting this? We still have to
Yes.
approve this.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I make a motion that we approve accepting the donations from the boosters to
Perfect.
meet the needs
Enough
of.
from the individual programs.
Yeah.
Oh, they're
Not
not,
from the boosters, the
okay,
individual programs.
from the individual athletic programs to fund the coaches, thank you.
I'll second that.
all in favor? Thank you. Perfect.
Is this car wash money or tapping parents or a little of both?
We ran clinics with
The
youth
clinic,
programs
yes, okay.
and raised the money for both of those coaches.
But against the other ones, we don't know, the non-lacrosse ones.
And last item is communications, just 2 quick comments. I meant to make this comment under the superintendent's report. I do want to acknowledge the fact that the class of 2017 graduated last Thursday night. It was a great evening. There was some consternation, I believe, during the afternoon. But
As the rain kept coming.
As the rain kept coming, but our headmaster was very, very confident that all would be okay, and in fact, it was. It was beautiful. The commencement exercises were well-planned, and it was perfect, in my opinion, from the very beginning to the very end. Graduation is always, again, in my opinion, the best day of the school year, and it proved to be the case last Thursday. Congratulations, John, for all the work that went into that. Everyone did a fantastic job. There was a lot of student involvement, which was just, I think, just made it even that much more special. So thank you very much for all of your work and effort to your team. And congratulations to Claire and Michael and Dana, who had Tom and Emma and Hannah graduate. So congratulations, and also for your participation.
And for John,
Yeah,
having a
yeah.
For his daughter, too.
son or daughter.
Yes.
Yeah, definite shout out to both Mary Lasivita, who was the field general that day, and also to the custodial staff, who I think cleaned off those chairs at least 3 times as the rain kept coming.
They
through.
learned,
they
they
kept
would go
going.
from tiles to the leaf blower. They
They
learned, they're like,
That's
okay,
funny.
one more time.
Yeah, I was thinking about them.
Yeah.
They did a great
I
job.
grabbed a bunch of handy wipes and handed them to my mother-in-law and said, just stuff this in your purse.
And then very quickly, you have the class of 2017 matriculation report, which gives an overview of the things and places that our 2017 graduates are going to do and where they'll go. Very impressive list. And then, of course, you have a copy of the grant approval letter, which we just received last Friday, and we're really, as we've already said, very excited about that. And with that,
Thank you very much.
For the joint meeting, will we be getting an update on other contracts?
yes. Yeah, actually, you will be getting, perhaps by the end of this week, I hope, you'll be getting some updates from me. They'll be, go to every school committee member, confidential updates on where we are in the process. You'll see what the proposals are on the table, how that conversation has gone back and forth. And so we're moving through that process expeditiously and hopefully successfully within the next 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. Motion to adjourn? Yay.
Well done.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.